point of view. And so it was like my boot camp, my training ground for Hermetic Kabbalah.
Mm.
And
what would you oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say my passion for the Kabbalah, my passion for the tarot cards, and my involvement in the Rosicrucians all sort of dovetailed together one afternoon when I was at the South Coast Plaza Shopping Center here in Costa Mesa, and I ran across a deck of tarot cards in a beautiful box. And the back of the box had a beautiful drawing of the Rose Cross, the Hermetic Rose Cross on the back. And I said to myself, I'm into the Rosicrucians. I like that. I'm into tarot cards. I like that. Tarot cards are into Kabbalah. I like that. And the name of this tarot deck was the Thoth Tarot, or Thoth, however you want to pronounce that.
Right.
And even though I didn't have, much money, I bought that deck and I took it home and I opened it up and I was freaked out. First of all, the cards are indescribably beautiful, but at the same time, they're really weird. And they weren't like any tarot deck that I'd ever seen before. And they were kind of scary. And the colors were very disturbing in some of them. And the images were very disturbing. Not because they looked particularly evil or anything, but they were so breathtakingly strange that it was disturbing to me. And I looked at that Fool card, the very first one in that deck, and this guy looks truly crazy. And he's got horns, and doesn't look like he's got eyelids, and there's strange web-like perspective threads that dominate the background, so you don't know whether you're being pulled in visually to the cards or whether the cards are projecting out at you. They require your mind to go to dimensional places that your mind usually doesn't go to when you look at tarot cards. So I was disturbed a bit, and I thought, these cards are so beautiful that I think they're so beautiful and captivating that it was almost like the devil drew them.
But this is the Thoth Tarot deck. That's the one by Crowley, isn't that right?
That's the one by Crowley and Frida Harris.
Yes.
But I'd never heard of Crowley before. I never heard of any of this. But the only thing I can compare it to is in the 1800s, there was this marvelous violinist, Paganini. Okay, Paganini could play the violin better than anybody in the planet. He could make the violin sound like no one had ever made the violin sound before. And his contemporaries and other musicians who were jealous of this immense talent said, no human can play that beautifully. He has to have help from the devil.
Right.
And so he overheard that one day, and he thought, I'm going to have some fun. And so he started showing up to his concerts being delivered in a hearse, and he'd wear a wild black cape, and he really had fun with that superstitious thing. Well, when I looked at that Thoth Tarot deck, it was almost like this is too magically beautiful. And in my youth, in my superstitious youth, I had that idea in the back of my mind. Maybe this is just so beautiful that only strange supernatural forces could have went into its creation. And then I looked at the side of the box, and it said Aleister Crowley. created by Aleister Crowley. And the name sort of rang a bell, but I didn't know what it was. And I had a little occult dictionary that I had bought at the supermarket about a month earlier. Really, at the grocery store, near the checkout, they had like make your own sushi and how to play bridge and occult dictionary. and it's just like a pamphlet, you know. And I got that out, and sure enough, I found the name Aleister Crowley in it, and it said Aleister Crowley, famous Scottish Satanist. And I went, oh boy, oh man, you know, I was right. The devil made these. The devil created these cards, and so I had a little crisis. I had a little freak out. I had a little nervous breakdown, and I put those cards back in the box. And the next time I talked to my brother says, "Oh, I bought a book, you know, a couple years ago that I think is the book that goes with those cards." He says, "I'm not afraid of the cards. Give me the cards, so they'll go with that book." And so I gave my brother those cards, and I said, "Good riddance." And a week or so later, a good friend of ours, who I write about in my autobiography, My Life with the Spirits, it's a magical friend. It's a friend that pops up in your life about every 3 years and changes everything.
A physical friend, or are we talking about a spiritual friend? Okay.
Yes, a physical friend, but physical friends are angels and spirits too, you know, in their own way. But anyway, Mad Bob had been in Guatemala growing mushrooms or something exciting and illegal. And we hadn't seen him in about 3 years, and we hugged, and we said, what have you been up to? And I said, well, I'm really interested in the Kabbalah and tarot and initiatory societies and stuff, and I really am having a good time with my magical career here. And then in passing, I said, oh, by the way, I really dodged a bullet there. I had this tarot deck by this Satanist guy, and I almost got sucked into using it. And Bob said, you know, what Satanist guy? And I said, well, Aleister Crowley. And then Bob looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world. And I knew he was thinking that because he said, you're the stupidest person in the world. And he said, everything that you think you want to learn about this Kabbalah and about this Hermetics and about this mysticism and this magic and this Western tradition, everything you want to know and want to learn, this guy knew more than anyone on the planet. And I said, well, but it says he was a Satanist, you know, was he a Satanist? And Bob says, no, he wasn't a Satanist. And then he thought for a second, and then he says, well, yeah, he sort of was.
Right.
and then he changed his mind again. He said, but no, he's not a Satanist. And finally he said, look, if he was a Satanist, he was a good kind of Satanist, and you are just going to love this guy. And so I said, okay. And Bob made me promise that I'd get those cards back and that I would borrow my brother's book, which is called the Book of Thoth, one of the last things Crowley wrote in his life. And in that book, Crowley does indeed try to explain everything he's learned and experienced in magic in the 72 odd years of his life. And that was sort of my introduction to Aleister Crowley, and it was several years. It took me several years to completely feel comfortable with the fact that the man really led a very eccentric and wild and crazy life. But he was brilliant beyond. He truly had no peer as far as a modern, 20th century magical mind was concerned, and that's what got me on the path to a formal study of Crowley's works.
So in your studies, you've been studying Crowley now for a long time, and again, this is a question that many people again come up against as soon as they come up against his work, so to speak, and there's different sources, as there always are, to that this is the most evil man that ever existed. Some say he's the most influential person of the 20th century and so forth. But do you feel that the man Aleister Crowley still is either black and white like this, or is he more a shade of gray? Have you been able to define him more, so to speak?
I would say he's a very brilliant shade of gray. Absolutely. First of all, I don't want to excuse or apologize the man's shortcomings. He certainly did have shortcomings. He was a human being. He was he had as many flaws and shortcomings as you or me or anybody else. But you can still be a very human, very flawed individual as far as relationships with other people or peculiarities of character and relationships and such, and still be a bona fide holy man. One of the I like to use the example of Sri Ramakrishna. For people who are familiar with the great Eastern yogi, holy man, guru, he was the guru of Swami Vivekananda, and more or less the heart and soul and creator of what in America we call the Vedanta Society, which is formal Hinduism.
Right.
And you read of stories of Ramakrishna, and he was not your stereotypical guru. He would buy drugs for his disciples. He would flaunt eating meat. He had relationships with women. He did things which may not seem to our 21st century sensitivities very, very wild and crazy, but for the image of a standard guru in India, the guy was a wild, loose cannon. Well, Crowley was similar to that, only Crowley had Crowley's brilliance even would blind himself. He was so brilliant intellectually that he could not fathom that everyone else wasn't almost as brilliant as he was. It did not occur to him that people could not tell when he was joking or when he was being facetious, or if he was being outrageous for the sake of shocking people out of their spiritual complacency. And he figured everybody was catching on to what he was doing, and the fact is that hardly anybody was catching on to what he was doing. A good example is people accuse him of being a cannibal. Even today, people say, well, Aleister Crowley ate people.
Right.
And well, first of all, I'll start off by saying, no, he didn't eat people. He was on a mountain climbing expedition. He's a world-class mountaineer. Some of his records still hold today.
Right.
and he was on a mountain climbing expedition. And when they were organizing the climb and organizing the party, there in the foothills of wherever it was, Nepal, they were